Hello guys, my name is Hugo, welcome to my channel. I just came back from NAB Show 2025 and this year was packed with a lot of different cool stuff. Not necessarily always new, but there is a lot of cool things and cool tools were presented so I can go and play with. So here's the list of my favorite gear that I saw this year. So I went to Laowa booth and they presented the new probe zoom lens which had range from 15 to 24 millimeters and it was T8. This lens was really impressive because it also had the attachments, the standard one, the periprobe, and the one that you can go any angle. So if you want to do like an underwater stuff, you can have your camera on the surface and you can actually dip down the lens under the water to shoot something. Impressive that they were able to manage the T8 even on the zoom lens. And they also told me that they have another version coming up, which is going to be from 15mm to 35mm, but this one's going to be a little bit darker at T11. Also an interesting choice, but I think I would rather go for the T8 because I think the light low light performance T8 is so much easier to manage, and honestly the 15 to 24 more than enough. And quite honestly, I played a little bit with this and the perspective you get at 15mm is just insane. So those who love to film miniatures or they love interesting perspective, they're gonna be loving this lens. And also the build quality is insane. I have a original probe with the periprobe attachment, but this one feels so much sturdier, so much, like doesn't feel like it's gonna break, because sometimes the original wall, sometimes it feels like if someone moves around or accidentally don't notice it, they can snap it in half, With this one, there is no feeling like this. Also, there was a little bit like a support to make it more stable. And the overall, I was told the overall, the optical performance is significantly more superior than the original one, which I think is also good news. Then they also DZO booth. They also presented the periprobe zoom lens, which is very similar to the one that Laowa has. But it has the range of from 18 to 28 millimeters and also T8, which I think also really great. But unfortunately, they give me too much options and too much information about this. But they also had 3 attachments, just like the Laowa. But the only difference that the attachment they can go underwater is more like straight down, like 90-degree, instead of like Laowa has more at an angle. Seems like a cool lens, and I suppose this lens is gonna be probably more affordable than the one at Laowa, but they didn't tell me any pricing information. And they also, what was weird at DZO, because they told me that you can't change the attachments on the lens, you have to buy the whole lens. But it didn't make sense because there was like just, I don't know, quarter torn to actually detach the lens, which I think designed to swap the lenses was significantly better than the one at Laowa when you actually have to screw it. But at the same time, they told me that no, that's not recommended. I don't know, maybe they will change the policy or something like this. But again, cool 2 products from Laowa and DZO in terms of probe lensing. Then there was Evoke booth, the Nunlux booth. They presented the new Evoke 5000B, which is impressive. It's a big unit light and it's equivalent of RE M90, the HMI. So basically it's a sun power, and it looks incredible. It comes with the Fresnel attachment 45-degree, and overall all this thing is impressive. But what was the most impressive is that it had built-in ballast, so you don't have any ballast outside. It's all built in the unit, which I think is a big selling point for many. And I think for those who can transport those, it's going to be significantly easier to transport because you have less cables, you have less units to carry. And I see that Aperture presented also a big light, but Aperture actually had the unit, this itself, the lighting unit itself had this almost like the same size as the Nunlux, but they also had additionally a ballast. So Nunlux had ballast built in, which I think is more impressive. Not sure about pricing, they didn't tell me about any pricing. Moving on. So then there was Evo robot. It's a motion control robot, which I was really interested to see because I've been interested in robots for a while. And at some point, I even wanted to invest in robots because I wanted to set up a like product shoot studio and stuff like that. But it was quite pricey always. And Evo is the most affordable robot they have and the smallest one. And I think when you're interested in doing like a setup, a studio for like just product shots, and you don't have to go too much in terms of movements and stuff like that, the size of this Evo robot is more than enough. And for some, maybe could be really intimidating to set up the robot, because it used to be that you had to have a technician, someone who gonna set up all the keyframes to make it all work. Right now they made the software so easy that you can just take the joystick, the gamepad from PS5, and just set it up. Or even better, you can just take the head and you just move it to a position that you like, set it a keyframe, then move it to another position, and set it as many keyframes as you want. And there is also like the keyframes smoothness, so you can adjust how smooth the keyframes are gonna be from one to point. So it's super easy to actually map it out and set your movements the way you like it. The payload of it was I think it was 20 pounds or something like this, but they had like RED V-RAPTOR with like cine lens, like I'm not sure, I don't remember what exactly lens was, but I think you're gonna be fine using like a Komodo or Raptor with the normal size macro lens, or maybe even probe lens. So that was another cool thing I saw on the NAB. Then I went to RED slash Nikon booth. They presented this new RED Komodo X and RED V-RAPTOR and V-RAPTOR X with Z mount, Nikon mount. And at first I remember I was so like skeptical and controversial in terms of like using the Z mount. I thought like, who would buy a Z mount, because like it's a strange mount, there is not many lens options and stuff like that. But actually Z mount has a huge advantage over other mounts, because it has the shortest flange distance. You can adapt pretty much any lens. You can even adapt RF mount and E mount. So that's just crazy, because basically they told me you can adapt E mount and Sony mount, and you can pass through the data connectors, and you can actually utilize the autofocus of Sony lenses and RF lenses, which I think is insane. Plus, if they're gonna improve all the autofocus features on these cameras thanks to Nikon, because they have the technology to do so, that would be a killer camera. So that's an interesting thing. I went to Tilta Nucleus M2, the new follow focus from Nucleus, and I just wanted to play to see it. And it looks cool, the new design. They have new screens, bigger screens, nicer screens, looks nicer, more intuitive, I would say. They have the new motors, but at the same time, all the old motors from the first generation of Nucleus M and the Nucleus Nano will work too, which is a good thing. Also, they had this removable ring that has a screen where you can see all the data distance, which I think also was cool. And actually you can swap the wheel, the focus wheel, from one side to another side. And also it had like a quick release mount on the side, which I think was great, because many ACs will love that when they want to set it up on the AC stand. And another thing I loved, that they changed the battery type to Sony batteries, which I think is great, because I didn't like those little batteries that you had to charge. Just a headache, And also Tilta actually presented another cool thing, which was 4 by 5 by 6 standard size electronic ND filter tray. That was interesting, because it wasn't still on the website of Tilta, but it looked really nice, because I feel like there are many advantages of electronic ND, because like the dimming, and it doesn't have cross polarization and stuff like that. The range of this ND was from 1 stop to 7 stops, and you can control it also with the Tilta Nucleus. There is like an extra knob on this side of the hand unit, where you can actually control the ND filters as well. Moving on I went to booth Nisi, and Nisi actually presented a new set of large frame primes, actually super speed primes. They call it Orius, and those are really interesting lenses. I mean, I was a fan from Athena when they were presented, but then after some research and tests, I wasn't that impressed. They were good lenses, but the consistency of them, to my taste, it wasn't like every set looked exactly the same and had exactly the same sharpness and performance, And some of the lenses were darker, some of them were like T1.9 and stuff like that. This, I was told, is completely identical in terms of performance, in terms of sharpness, in terms of size, and in terms of low light performance. So the whole set is 1.4. And the set is, right now they presented, is 18mm, 24, 35, 50, and 85. What's really impressive is that they have 18mm at T1.4. And that's the thing that is tricky. We can see many lenses, super fast lenses at 20 or 21, but if you go wider, it's really hard optically to achieve this low light performance that they can get. And they got it at 18mm. And they also the large frame, because the image circle is 46mm. And they told me that the whole set covers the sensor of Blackmagic Cine URSA 17K with a 65mm sensor, basically a medium format sensor. I didn't test it myself, but they told me they cover the sensor, even the 18mm, which is I think is really impressive. The size of the lens is a little bit larger than the thinner, obviously, but I feel like the size is absolutely manageable. They feel hefty, but not to a point that you can't use it. I feel like they have a nice weight to it. The build quality is great, and the mechanical performance also felt nice. I have to deep dive testing them to tell you the image quality and stuff like that, but from the look of it, it felt like pretty much like the Athena look, but faster. So you have a more shallow depth of field. So really interesting set of lenses, and I think for those who are interested in the super fast optics, this is the choice, because the Dizio has the RLS, and basically Nisi has its own take on the super fast glass. Okay, this year also I went to Sony booth, and Sony booth presented their new Realta Mini. They don't call it Realta, but basically it's Realta Mini, basically a detachable block where you can use your camera with the smallest setup possible. We all know what is Realta basically. Okay, so that's a smaller version of it, and this version very interesting. I think again, it comes with E-mount, you can adapt it to PL mount. It doesn't have built-in ND filters because they say it's too small, but you can actually use the tray above to swap ND filters. It's not the button, it's mechanically. You actually take it out and put it in, which I think it's not a big deal, honestly. At least they give an option to put a filter in. And but it doesn't have autofocus. Probably it's a limitation to the camera, so they don't give you that. I think it's pricey. It's very expensive. I think they told me it's around 25k, so a lot of money for such a thing. But they also told me that there is a cable, longer cable version that you can attach to it, because the unit itself, you can actually remove the cable from it. But on the other side to the camera, you actually have to break down the camera just like you did before with a normal Realta, so you can plug it the cable to the unit. One thing that was probably the most impressive with this mini Realta is because when you stack it together, the distance between one lens and the other lens is less than 70mm. So technically you can use this setup as immersive VR content creating machine, where you can create all this insane resolution, because each sensor will give you 8.6K, so you get pretty much 17K resolution in total, more than 8K per eye, which I think is incredible, because for those who know how to make VR content, this is great. But at the same time, they don't have any lensing solutions, and they told me that if you're gonna do this setup, you probably better use E-mount. But they don't have lenses, the ultra-wide lenses that can actually accommodate their request. So basically they advertise it that you can do so, but there is no lenses. I think the solution for that would be if you use Laowa lenses with E-mount. They probably have something wide enough to actually get you there. But again, cool solution. I think it's going to be very popular for high-end productions, so we'll see. Then there is a Blackmagic booth. I think it was the largest booth on the whole NAB, larger than Sony, because usually Sony are the biggest, but this year Blackmagic is still in the show. They presented a lot of cool new products. Probably the most interesting for many will be the PYXIS 12K. Same body as the normal PYXIS camera, but it has this 12K RGBW 16-stop sensor, which I think is really impressive. And considering the price for the camera is only $6,000, it is a great option. It still doesn't have ND filters, and probably the difference between the big URSA and PYXIS 12K will be just probably frame rates, because they told me the sensor performance is exactly the same dynamic range and stuff like that. But honestly, the frame rates are decent, and you still can do different resolutions without cropping, so it's 12K, 8K, 4K, but the resolutions are decent, and when you downscale it to 8K, I think you get around like 70 frames per second, which for many is more than enough. But if you need more frame rates, you have to go to the larger brother, URSA 12K. But again, impressive possibilities and technologies in the PYXIS body, and I think this camera will be very popular. They also told me that actually they started implementing autofocus features in their cameras, and it's something that no one expected from Blackmagic. But even from the beginning, like a baby steps beta version of it, it's decent. It's not to a point where you can actually use it, but you can see the steps they're making in the right direction. It also has the face detection. You can choose between faces. It's decent, you know. And by the way, you can just update it with old cameras, and it doesn't have to be the new camera, so old cameras can also take advantage of autofocus. And I think as they're gonna keep improving it, all the Blackmagics that we have can actually maybe get autofocus finally, which would be really cool, right? Then they also presented, not presented, they presented it last year, the URSA 17K with a 65mm medium format size sensor, which price, they told me it's already for sale, you can buy it, and the price is 22,000, which I think it's a decent price for such a big sensor, and many people who love the large frame, big sensors. This one is even large, it's more in medium format territory. They're gonna love it. And for those who wanted to film something like a Lexus 65 size sensor, so they have a solution for you for really reasonable money, I would say. It also features the 16 stops sensor, but as far as I understand, the sensor technology is a little bit different, because the PYXIS 12K and the URSA 12K, they have the sensor that features dual ISO. So they have 800 and 3200, where URSA 17K doesn't feature dual ISO. So it has only fixed one base ISO, which is 800. So not sure about that. Gotta do some more research about what exactly the sensor is there. But again, they claim in also 16 stops of dynamic range, just as with 12K PYXIS and 12K URSA Cine. The biggest, probably, and the most interesting product this year, for me at least, it was the immersive VR camera, the 16K Blackmagic URSA with a dual lens in front. And this camera is impressive. It is pricey, it's 30 grand, but it's a very niche product, and I had so many questions about this camera. I was waiting for this camera because I'm very interested in creating immersive format. I've done so much research and tests trying to achieve the quality that Apple Vision gets with their cameras, but simply wasn't possible, because when you're using VR headset like Apple Vision, even 8K cameras don't look good, because there wasn't just enough resolution. And here we get 8K per eye, so the camera gets 16K total. And by the way, they confirmed that all the immersive content that is shown on Apple Vision by Apple is shot on not exactly this camera, but they say a version of this camera. We're probably all new, but it is confirmed now. Some questions that I had to this camera. First, they didn't confirm, but when I assumed that it's exactly the same sensor as an 17K camera, just split in halves, they kind of told me yes. So basically you get roughly a full frame square sensor per lens. Each gives you a 8K per eye. It has dual lenses, and each lens is 7.2 millimeters. It has fixed aperture at f4, and it has fixed focus. It also has ND filters, because that's how you're gonna adjust your exposure. For many, it may be weird that they actually went this route with a fixed aperture and a fixed focus, because you may think like, okay, how am I gonna just set my exposure? But actually, when you do VR contact, your approach to filming is different, and if you're doing it for Apple Vision, you have to do it at 90 FPS, and at 90 FPS to get your exposure at daytime, it's not actually a big problem, even at f4. But there could be more problem actually when you're going the other way, when you have to shoot something at night. And just like the 17K URSA, this one doesn't feature dual ISO, it has only one base ISO at 800, which probably another proof that they're using the same sensor, just split in half. Probably the reason why they went fixed focus is when you're doing VR content, you don't actually need to focus much, so they probably used the optimal focus distance for the lens and they set it fixed. And actually that kills so many problems in terms of calibration, because you don't have to calibrate the lenses, because they already calibrated to the optimal point. And because when you focus, and they have to be focused at the same time, two lenses, it's complicated process. So for those who are interested in this camera, maybe leave a comment below, and I can actually make a separate video talking more about the features and details, so that, because I asked them many questions about this camera, because I wanted to know more about it, and I can actually, if there are enough interested people about that, I can make a separate video talking about specifically about this camera, the technology and the software. And talking about the software, the last thing I want to mention is the new DaVinci Resolve 20. They packed it up with even more cool AI features. There are plenty of them, and there are many videos actually online already where you can find what's going on with those features. But it is impressive how they move in so fast with their software, and I'm really glad to see this. But what was weird is they implemented the new software where you can actually work with VR content, specifically with their cameras, but they told me it's not exclusively for their camera, you can work with any camera. But again, finally they have software where you can work with immersive content, and they told me not right now, but later on you'll be able natively support Apple Vision for preview. So basically you can put your Apple Vision Pro and view whatever you're editing, which I think is something that we all needed. And you can pretty much make everything in one software. So it used to be, because there is not a single software that you can do all. I had to use 3 different software to actually process VR content, which was a real headache, and I had to actually export the file, then load it to Apple Vision and view it. And if I did something wrong, I have to go back all these steps, use render, use all the 3 software, and load it again, and hope I did everything right. Now you're going to be able to use Apple Vision Pro to preview what you're actually editing and what you're using and how it's going to look. And that's a big thumbs up. But what they told me is that this version of VR editing features in DaVinci is going to be available only for those who purchased the camera. And that didn't make any sense to me, because it raises so many questions. Like, for instance, the camera is expensive, it's 30 grand. Not everyone will be able to afford this camera. And if, for instance, like it's a rental house, or what if a rental house rents the camera to someone's gonna shoot something, how they gonna edit all this stuff? Because the license gets only the one who owns the camera. And or if, for instance, if you are just a cinematographer and you just film, you don't do editing and stuff like that, how they gonna deal with that? So I don't know, many questions. They probably didn't still figure out themselves how they didn't go with this, but they definitely have to change that, because it's something that I think has to be released for everyone in the new software version of the DaVinci. But again, kudos for all these new features that implemented, because I love to see these VR features and functionality in DaVinci, and I've been waiting for a long time. And another side thing that I noticed when they did a preview of the VR headset, the problem with VR right now is not only the software, that there is no software to actually edit it, but there is no viewing app that natively supports the Apple Vision, just like Apple TV, you know. And I asked about the software like this for a long time, and I couldn't find any. You had to use some like third-party software, which doesn't always work well. But when they did this demo, I saw that they actually had a native from Apple player for the immersive content. They told me it's not out yet, but it's going to be available for everyone soon. So a lot of exciting stuff. I hope this information was useful, and also stay tuned because I'm going to be adding more videos with interviews of representation from different companies talking about their products. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.